patterns are the predominant force controlling your life. The thing is, most people don't understand patterns, what they are, how they're controlling their life, and most people think they're in control. Couldn't be more wrong. Most people, your unconscious controls the majority of what you're doing, the majority of the decisions that you make, and the majority of the reactions that you have. Now, the difference between people who are world class and the people who are not world class oftentimes comes down to patterns or rituals. So it's become popular in society today. You'll hear people all the time be like, "Oh, I'm triggered." Well, what they're really saying is something happened, they were triggered, and it fired off a reaction, a pattern that they have that's a predetermined set of reactions. And so stimulus happens, boom, and they're already in a reactionary state versus a proactive state. So let's think about this, because you can either be proactive, or most people are living the majority of their life in reactivity. So they're just reacting to all of the stuff that's coming at them and all of the stuff from life. And they're not taking control over the fact that they have a personal responsibility and a personal ability to control how they take that in, how they frame that, and the patterns that they fire off. So a prime example of this is, you probably know somebody who, it doesn't matter what happens, they always find something wrong, always. And you also probably know somebody who, it doesn't matter what happens, and they always find something right about it. So really simple example, but it massively impacts how you perceive life, but then also the results that you get from life. So patterns are the controlling force that oftentimes dictate the destiny people create. And if you learn to take control of the patterns in your life, hey, does this fire off a pattern? Do you have a common stimulus or a common trigger? And then do you fire off a pattern based off of a neural association with that then dictates steps of behavior? A common one might be something great happens and people feel like they need to celebrate. You may not even like drinking that much, and yet people are programmed by society to just be like, okay, now it's time to go drink. Now it's time to celebrate. Here's how we celebrate. We haven't even thought about the decision about how we want to celebrate. We're just going through this unconscious thing because we've been told, we've done this thing, we've built the triggers, we've built the responses, and now here we go and we carry out this whole pattern. And so patterns control people's entire lives. and they wonder why they can't get unstuck. Well, it's because you're stuck in your patterns most times. Most times you're firing off patterns that keep you stuck, that don't take you where you want to go. And if you want to change that, you have to interrupt the patterns. It's like a record or like an old CD. It's going to keep looping and going around and around unless you scratch it up. You got to scratch those patterns up. You have to interrupt the patterns. And so oftentimes it can be helpful to create a pattern interrupt. So if, say, drinking, just to use that same example, is a thing, and you think, oh man, this isn't really something that I thought about, and maybe it shouldn't be used for every celebration. Maybe I only want to use it for big celebrations. Well, maybe you create a stimulus in your brain that says, you know what, this isn't really that big of a celebration. And you link it that it has to be of a certain magnitude. And let's say truthfully, there's not more than 4 of these in a year, once a quarter, right? So then you're not drinking out of celebration for all these events just because you have to. You're interrupting the pattern and you're scratching it up to where you question, and you're not automatically being ruled by your unconscious that is just carrying out the predetermined things that at one point you probably consciously decided. So a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, it's part of indoctrination, and we're all indoctrinated. When you're kids, we model. We don't know what we're doing. So we're just carrying out behaviors over and over again. And we just accept these things as this is how the world works. But the world doesn't have to work that way. And there are plenty of examples of people who the world doesn't work that way for them, and they do great. There's plenty of people out there right now. I'll just give you a quick side tangential example. There's plenty of people out there on social media. I see the guys, all the bros, they're like, bro, if you drink, like, you can't drink at all. You can never drink. And like, you're just not being your best self if you ever drink. And then you got people like Richard Branson, billionaire. And let's be clear, he does not overindulge. He's doing stuff like drinking is not controlling his life, but he'll have cocktails, right? So I think he's a pretty good example of like, he's doing pretty good, and he'll occasionally have a drink. So it's just easy to point out there. Now, if you have a substance problem, dude, don't drink. Like, if it's an issue for you, or if it's controlling your life, dude, take a few years off. Like, it's fine. People are like, oh my gosh, I took 1 month off. And it's like, yeah, dude, like, just take a year off. It's not a big deal. Like, have one afterwards if you want. But if you can't have it responsibly, don't do it. So, but it's that indoctrination that so many people have had that it then causes them to just loop through these patterns. And these patterns, by and large, are designed to keep people stuck in a certain sense, because people want to conform. People, by nature, some people are more compliant than others, but society in general is like, hey, just be compliant, conform, have a degree of complacency, don't try to achieve too much, but try to achieve. Like, everybody will tell you, hey, really, bro, like try to achieve, but also don't achieve too much. Like, don't achieve too much to where it makes me feel bad about myself and my decisions. So, you know, there's the old saying, be careful who you tell bad news to, be even more careful who you tell good news to. Super true. Found that to be super accurate in my own life. So, guys, going back to patterns here, though, understanding patterns and learning to interrupt patterns in your life and learning to create your own patterns and your own rituals that empower you, massively important. Everything will trickle down from there in a certain sense, because if you have somebody says something and it upsets you, so you're offended, you just fired off a pattern. Now your whole state is destroyed. Now you're in a disempowered state. Now your whole physiology is upset. You're bought into this thing. And you're like, dude, like, who even cares? Somebody said something and you're so easily controlled. Now they've got inside of your head and they're controlling the conversation that you're having in your life, and they're monopolizing your time. They're owning you. And they're doing that because you've allowed a pattern to take place where you don't know how to shut it off. You haven't even realized that you're running a pattern. So the easiest thing that I would say to do is just start analyzing your patterns, and then find the ones that you're dissatisfied with, and then work on putting pattern interrupts there. Work on putting a neural trigger, if you will, that if you get the urge to say do something that you're like, yeah, you know, I don't think I want to do this anymore, then it fires off, and at least you're conscious about it, and you're like, do I really want to do this, or do I not? Am I acting out a pattern of my former self, or am I going to choose the new pattern of my future self? And so having that perspective has really helped me a lot, because it's allowed me to really just believe life is always working for me, to believe that I live in a friendly universe, because no matter what happens, I just fire this off. I'll give you a great example. This morning, well, you know what, I don't want to go there. But it's super powerful living that way, making those decisions, because they are decisions. They can greatly enhance your life, and then you can also get control of your patterns. So Tony Robbins is a great example. You know, he talks about, he spent the last 40 years studying people and studying their patterns. And once you learn how to break patterns, once you learn how to study the patterns of world-class people, of really successful people, then you can choose the patterns that you want, and you don't have to be locked into the patterns that maybe you were raised with. I'll give you an easy example. One pattern I was raised with is like, dude, leave a room, turn the lights off. And I'm like, dude, like, Like, it's fine. It's not that much, you know. But I grew up in this scarcity mindset where it's like, oh my gosh, if we don't turn the lights off, our electricity bill might be $5 higher. Like, dude, who cares if it's $50 higher? Like, whatever, it's fine. But that's a pattern that I still have, and I still have to interrupt, because I will just naturally go to turn that light off. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm just turning the lights on just to turn them on. And I'm just leaving them on, because I refuse to do that. I refuse to carry out those patterns that I absorbed as a kid, but it's no longer serving me. Like, it's definitively not helping me. It's not even worth my time for it to occupy mental space, but they do. And so we all have to go through this, where we first go through indoctrination, we're brought up, and then we have to indoctrinate ourselves on what we believe, on the values that we want, the ideals that we want, and to really make that decision about how we want to go through life. So patterns, daily rituals, habits, call them whatever you will. There's some minute distinctions in the different areas there, but so many people, they're focused on the habits without really delving into the unconscious. And as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And I can't tell you how many people I know that it's like the world is always falling. They can't ever catch a break. They can't ever get on top of things. And I look at their lives, and to a T, 100% of them, their unconscious is just running out of control. It is just dominating everything that they do, and they can't seem to break those unconscious patterns. So if things get too good, they will sabotage. They cannot handle things going well. And that's a pattern too. It's a pattern to not be able to accept those things and not be able to actually have abundance. And sometimes there's no way to break through to people until they're ready to break through, until they're ready to say, you know what, I'm tired of stuff not working for me. I'd like stuff just to work for me. I'd like things to be easy. And I was one of these people. And once I made that decision, dude, it's like things just started to become easy. And things just worked out. And even when things didn't work out, I'm like, well, it's working out for me. Lo and behold, it works out. And it's fantastic. So, you know, maybe just consider those things. Maybe that'll help. Patterns, guys, it's a big deal. It will control your life until you get a hold of them. And once you do, it will change your life forever. Make the unconscious conscious, get a hold of it, figure out the things that you really do want, figure out the things that you don't want. Probably easier to start with that. And just go maximize your life. Be great, everyone.